Hello, thank you everyone for joining us. I do have everyone on the mute function. We did that to eliminate any extra noise. You all should have access to the Q&A and chat function. So we'll be taking questions towards the end. This is a knowledge management and strategy presentation in collaboration with two of our Rubinger Fellows on accessory dwelling units. So thank you again for joining. And the two fellows that we have presenting today more on their ADU and ADU adjacent work is Helen Learn and Brian Geyer. Helen is based at LISC, and Brian is at Human Resource Development Council in Bozeman, Montana. So with that, I am going to turn it over to Helen to share more about her work. Helen, are you there?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. And just give me one quick second to share my screen. Okay.
Thank you. Well, good morning and good afternoon, everyone. I'm Helen Learn. I am the co-executive director of LISC, and I'm going to spend the next 20 minutes giving an overview of our program called the Backyard Homes Project, which is an affordable housing initiative that combines accessory dwelling units, ADUs, and the Section 8 program in Los Angeles. Next slide. So Los Angeles, is for those who are not familiar, is a city of sprawl, gigantic city with a complex political system, a weak mayor, strong city council, 15 city council members. We have mountains, we have oceans, and we have a housing crisis and a homelessness crisis. So in that context, my organization, LISC, our work is to really work in lower income and underserved communities to shape their future through policy and architecture. And we do that as a nonprofit urban design organization. Our work tends to test pilot initiatives in partnership with government and community partners and see how they could potentially scale and become a solution that is often first informal, and then the hope is that it ends up being formalized. Next slide. The potential in LA is huge, given that in the city of Los Angeles alone, we have over 500,000 single-family lots. Our zoning code has often prioritized that, and it's something that is being questioned as we think about what does density look like in Los Angeles as we grow, and what does it mean for LA to kind of meet its housing supply as the housing crisis in Los Angeles and California continues. Next slide. And of that 500,000 single-family lots, what does that actually mean? That means that's 50% of developable land in Los Angeles, and that's the potential for us to build, in some ways, double the single-family density by building ADUs. And you'll see from this kind of a rough map here that all the darker parts are where there is developable land that's zoned for single-family homes. Next slide.
Helen, would you be able to just talk just a little louder?
Yes. Is that better?
A little bit better.
How about now?
Yes, slightly.
Great. And so in the context of Los Angeles having a lot of single-family zone lots where it's buildable for ADUs, at the same time, our Section 8 program in Los Angeles, like many cities across the nation, has a huge wait list. 3% of applicants receive a voucher, and you can just keep going with the next slide. It opens up every, many years. I think it was 10 years since it opened up recently. And for those who are fortunate enough to get a Section 8 voucher, 76% of those voucher holders get rejected by a landlord, and there's some policy on the county level trying to change that discrimination. And then next slide. And so that means that nearly half of the vouchers that someone ends up getting actually gets returned. So given that there is a lot of demand for Section 8 housing, there's a lot of vouchers, but there's not a lot of landlords who are willing to take Section 8 voucher holders. We saw that as an opportunity coupled with our progressive state policy. So this slide shows a policy that was took into effect January 2017. And what those California state law did was create probably the most progressive state policy on ADUs in the nation. And there's a lot of specific details, but one I want to highlight broadly, especially for some of the attendees who are thinking about changing their ADU policy, is that what it meant was for the first time ADUs not only were fully by right, that doesn't require a public hearing process or entitlements, but it also removes some of the regulatory barriers that made ADUs previously unfeasible. And some of the highlights I wanted to note is in this diagram, which is that ADUs are defined as units that if they're detached, they can be up to 1,200 square feet. If they are attached, they're, they can be up to 50% of the existing unit. There are no passageway requirements. In LA, previously there was a 10 feet passageway requirement, which made it really hard in our lots, which are typically 50 by 100 feet. Setbacks were not required when you convert a garage. And probably one of the most ingenious elements was as it relates to parking. There are no parking requirements for your ADU if you're within half a mile from transit or in a historic zone. And if you're not, parking doesn't actually have to be covered. It could be uncovered and it could be tandem. And so a lot of these parking requirements are met now by putting those parking spaces tandem uncovered in the passageways that are no longer required. So that has opened up a floodgate for ADUs across California. Next slide. And in the city of Los Angeles, you can tell from the permitting process how that has changed. Previous to 2017, the number of units each year were about a couple hundred, with estimates of 50,000 unpermitted ADUs before this happened. And once state law changed in 2017 and 2018, the number of ADU applications increased so much from to over 4,000 to nearly 6,000 in 2018. And the bulk of it was actually converting your garage. Some of them were additions, and a smaller percentage was new construction. So this shows that when government gets out of the way and provides clarity, that the market will actually result in more housing. One of the challenges here is that the majority of these ADUs permitted most likely are by people who have the resources, who have the knowledge, have the funding to be able to go through this process, and which means that most of these ADUs are probably expensive or off the market, and none of them are, a handful of them are naturally occurring affordable, but none of these units are strictly affordable housing. Next slide. So our organization, we were informed by our experience doing two types of projects with government partners. The first is working with the city of Los Angeles to do a single ADU pilot project. And what you have here is a rendering of a craftsman-inspired ADU in a hillside in a historic zone neighborhood. The homeowner has to pay for the full cost of construction, and our organization as an urban design nonprofit served as the architects and program managers, project managers. And this will be actually completed in the next month. Our general contractor was Habitat for Humanity, and this is a 2-bedroom, 2-story, 1.5-bath ADU, which is kind of like a typical single-family home. The cost for this without the homeowner extras was about $300,000, which is still very competitive. And it was a way to do a couple of things. One, demonstrate that you can build contextually. This was before state law passed. Second, to demonstrate you can build affordably, and we did that in partnership with Habitat for Humanity. Third is to test a financing product in partnership with a community development financial institute, Genesis LA. They tested a construction loan process. The homeowner had their own equity, but that wasn't enough to pay for the full cost. And the fourth was to help the city think about what is their ADU policy and program look like. The state's law passes these broad rules, but local jurisdictions still have the ability to pass their own ordinance that could be slightly more restrictive in certain areas. So LA hasn't passed theirs yet, and this is a project that will inform that. The next slide. This is what it looks like maybe a few months ago, and you'll see that the mountains are in the back. You were able to build double the density. The existing unit is actually a single-story home, but given that it slopes towards the back, we're able to put a two-story home so we can preserve the open space on the lot. Next slide. The second project that we worked on was supporting the County of Los Angeles, and the County of Los Angeles is significantly bigger. LA is one of 88 cities in the County of LA. So the County of LA is run by 5 supervisors, and because of our homelessness crisis, they passed an initiative that put forth about $1 million to test an ADU pilot program that had various components, from helping homeowners convert their existing unpermitted units to a design competition run by the Arts Commission. And this program that we helped on was to incentivize homeowners to build a new ADU, and in exchange, they get $75,000 of a forgivable loan, and they have to commit to housing someone who was formerly homeless in 10 years, for 10 years. Next slide. And this program meant that was focused towards homeowners who lived in unincorporated County of Los Angeles, and you'll see that through a very intense application and vetting process. So we have 3 homeowners that all, without this money, the $75,000 forgivable loan, wouldn't be able to finance and build their ADU, and their commitment to the 10 years is kind of on the other end of the spectrum of seeing how can you use ADUs to support, be a source of permanent supportive housing. Next slide. So with our experience working with both the city and the county, we wanted to provide an easier way for the average homeowner to be providers of affordable housing. So we ended up creating a program called the Backyard Homes Project. It just launched last year. It was informed through a significant research and development that was funded by our local LISC office here in Los Angeles and the Wells Fargo Foundation. And what we ended up doing was kind of leveraging what I had showed earlier, which is that there are lots of Section 8 voucher holders who can't find a landlord willing to accept their voucher. There are a lot of homeowners who have land, and there's actually even more homeowners that are low to moderate income who are cash poor and asset rich, and that if they had some support, they could build an ADU and use it to house someone who at an affordable rate. Next slide. With LISC's support, what we ended up doing was putting together an advisory group of experts in Los Angeles in housing, affordable housing development, policy, finance, to kind of get consensus in terms of what are the best practices, what have people tried before, and what is the gap. We had an expert advisory committee coupled with focus groups throughout the city of Los Angeles, talking to real homeowners to ask them, what would it take for you to build an ADU and to make it affordable? And based on the feedback we heard, that was what shaped the components of our program. Next slide. Then that happened in 2018. So based on all that, we heard loud and clear that what homeowners needed was what you see here. They want someone to manage the process. They didn't know how to hire an architect, how much to pay them. They thought that the permitting process was very confusing and unpredictable. They had no idea, who to trust and how to find a good general contractor. Many of them said that they're not able to take out a loan because banks don't actually finance and provide a loan for the future. That future thing that hasn't been built yet. A lot of people also expressed challenges and concerns of being a landlord and participating in the Section 8 program and worried about their tenants. So given all that, we kind of brought together partners that would address each of these issues, which we kind of will put under the umbrella of incentives. And the idea is that we work with average homeowners who want an ADU, but they don't have the resources. And what we get from it is an ADU that is a win-win. Helps homeowners earn income and build equity, and the ADUs are affordable so that a tenant can rent it, and it's a source of affordable housing in Los Angeles. Next slide. So quickly, I'm going to go through some of the partners, and maybe you can just click through them really quickly. LA Masters, that's LA as the program managers and the architects. RNLA is a nonprofit general contractor, Restore Neighborhoods LA. So together we kind of serve a design build function. We partner with 2 CDFIs, Self-Help Federal Credit Union, the largest credit union in the nation, along with our local CDFI Genesis LA, and together we're offering a new mortgage product that can help homeowners who may not be able to take a line of credit, they may not have enough of their own equity. We also partnered with housing experts that are familiar with the Section 8 program, familiar with what it means to be a first-time landlord. The Housing Rights Center is a nonprofit that will train our new homeowners to become landlords for the first time. And we have 2 housing providers, LA Family Housing and St. Joseph Center, who will be matched with one of our homeowners, and they will help them become Section 8 landlords and help them find a tenant and provide those tenants ongoing support. And as I mentioned, this wouldn't be possible without the support of our local LISC office, as well as the Wells Fargo Foundation, who has supported not just the research and development, but supported our organization's time to be a project manager and to do designs in advance to save homeowner time and money as it comes to the design process. Next slide. We also have a partnership currently with our housing authority. HACLA is the housing authority for the city of Los Angeles, and what they're doing is that they're going to help us monitor the homeowner's commitment to be a Section 8 landlord for 5 years. We're not having homeowners put a lien on their property or do a more detailed contract and put a deed restriction in place. So we're vetting homeowners in advance to make sure that they're committed. And our housing authority also sees this program as a way to be a marketing tool for the Section 8 program overall. So they're committed to having a single point of contact for all of the homeowners that participate in our process. Next slide. And for those who are curious about how the financing works, we have 2 CDFI partners. Genesis LA is, they're going to help us financially vet homeowners that are interested to make sure that it's an investment that makes sense. And they're also providing a guarantee of $650,000 that was funded by JP Morgan Chase. And that guarantee is given to Self-Help Federal Credit Union, who's the one deploying the new mortgage product. And how the mortgage product works is that it is in some ways a cash out refi. It provides a loan to a homeowner that takes out the existing mortgage they have on their home and adds on the cost of ADU construction. And I think this is a very innovative approach because typical commercial banks will not provide that. And the way that they're taking this risk is because they have this guarantee. And also Self-Help Federal Credit Union spent a year putting together the financial product, and some of the details are in this slide, which is that it's a fully underwritten first mortgage, fixed rate, no PMI. The interest rate is really based on loan to value and credit score. And the idea is that the mortgage is used to repay the existing mortgage and also fund the construction of the new ADU. Next slide. Because we also want to guarantee some level of certainty for homeowners before they make such a big investment, our organization has created 7 designs, and our general contractor has committed to a price point. So these are all baseline costs for 7 different models. The lowest for new construction for LA and California standards is $115,000, with the smallest possible 2-bedroom at $180,000. And for those who are not limited by their finances, we've designed a more generous 2-bedroom new construction at $220,000. Garages are also a common feature in our city landscape, and a lot of homeowners are interested in converting their existing garage. So garage conversions start at $100,000, and they really rely on having a strong foundation and a structure. So these are some of our baseline costs, and we actually have a 25-page manual that outlines all the elements that are included in this design build product. Next slide. So what you see here are the different building plans for the 7 models. I think what was really important for us was to figure out how to get to 2 bedrooms and the minimal square footage, given that a 2-bedroom unit receives almost $2,000 in rent under the Section 8 guidelines in Los Angeles. So it ends up penciling out. And we also recognize that there are some homeowners who aren't limited by what they're able to provide. They're not limited by the financing, so that they may want a more generous 2-bedroom after their 5-year commitment. Next slide. Here are the different styles that we've come up with. And overall, the idea is that we wanted these ADUs to be designed in a way that doesn't look cookie cutter, doesn't look like a box, but that it fits into the character and the context of the architecture in Los Angeles. So the 3 different styles fall into modern and Spanish and craftsman. So you can keep on going. These are the slides from our homeowner price package, which outlines how you can start with this building plan that they will all be adapted to your property, and homeowners can choose like if they want it to have a craftsman flair, or modern flair, or Spanish flair. Next slide. And you can probably go through these slides every 3 seconds. So these are some renderings that just show what it looks like inside and outside, just to give a sense of what this would be. And our overall goal is to use the lowest with an affordable budget. How can you create something that has design excellence? And that is a priority of ours, while also keeping the construction costs low. Next slide. And you'll see that there's some features like built-ins and tabletops, and it comes with all appliances. And to end, what we end up hoping for is that homeowners who participate, and so far we have over 140 applications. For the first year, we're able to help 10 to 12 homeowners, of which 4 to 6 will have access to the financing product, and we're hoping the other half will have their own financing available. The idea is that homeowners, it's a win-win. Homeowners build equity, they earn income. We are able to get more homeowners participating in the Section 8 program, and that we're creating and testing a program that's not reliant on public subsidy, beyond Section 8, that is tax credit dependent, and it can be financed by a homeowner individually, and having a possibility in which individual homeowners are able to contribute to our affordable housing pipeline. And I think with that, I'm going to end. On our website at www.mas.la, all of the collateral for this program, including the detailed program specifics, as well as designs and the price points, are on our website. Thank you, everyone. I look forward to Brian's presentation and answering your questions.
Thank you so much, Helen. I did just want to ask a quick question before we transition. In terms of the parking, was it tandem parking? And the source for the $75,000 for the incentive, where did that come from?
The $75,000 for the County of LA came from the county passing 47 measures that were trying to address homelessness. So the county actually has a lot of funding, especially from tax and bond measures that were passed. And so they had extra funding that was the result of voters choosing to address this housing crisis through taxes. So as a result, LA County had a lot more money to work with, and they were able to dedicate money for a specific purpose.
Thank you. And now we're going to turn it over to Brian to share more about his work at HRDC. Brian, are you still there?
I am.
Wonderful.
You'll have to give me a moment. I'm jotting down notes from Helen's presentation. That was so good. There's so much I have to steal from Helen's program here. So you can advance to the next slide. My name is Brian Geyer. I'm the Community Development Manager here at HRDC in Bozeman, Montana. Bozeman, Montana is also suffering from an affordable housing crunch. We have a lot of new members of our community who are arriving, and I don't think our working wages aren't able to keep up with some of the salaries that are kind of arriving through our tech sector. And so we have an issue where we have a real issue with our workforce making fairly decent wages but still being priced out of the community. This year our income limits just came in, and we just crossed the $90,000 threshold for our median family income, and in Los Angeles that might not seem like a lot, but in Montana that is a jaw-dropping figure, and everybody was quite surprised when we crossed that $90,000 threshold for such a small and relatively isolated community. So HRDC over the last few years has decided that really the way that we are going to tackle the affordable housing issue here is by going small, and kind of inadvertently we ended up going small across the housing spectrum. So for home ownership all the way to chronic homelessness, going small has sort of been the approach our organization has taken to addressing the affordable housing issue. And through the resources that I acquired through LISC, I was able to spend my year not only directing these projects but chronicling our efforts as a Rubinger Fellow. So thank you to LISC for that. Next slide. So as I've mentioned, housing costs are increasing, greatly outpacing the growth in our average wages. Montana has one of the lowest wages in the country, and you can go to the next slide. The big gap exists between what it costs to construct and what our customers can afford. So as I mentioned earlier, how are we going to reduce construction costs? Well, our solution up to this point has been to build small. So the first way we're doing that on three fronts, again, as I mentioned earlier, we're addressing affordable home ownership, below market rentals, and chronic homelessness with tiny homes. So you can go to the next one. So our affordable home ownership project, which has actually kind of morphed into an ADU project, kind of, again, inadvertently, and I'll get to that later, is our Beale Street tiny homes. And our Beale Street tiny homes are a 600-foot unit and a 300-foot unit here located in the busy downtown sector of Bozeman, Montana. These units will be permanently affordable. They'll be placed in our land trust with a 2% appreciation cap, primary residency requirement, and capital improvement restrictions, kind of the standard restrictions you'll see on most ground lease properties. The small home was sold for $140,000, and the larger home, the 600-foot home, was sold for $170,000. And through the city's new affordable housing ordinance, we were able to take what was the last home in our land trust, or the last lot in our land trust. We were able to split a 5,000-foot lot into two 2,500 square foot lots, and then you can't really see it very well on this rendering, but there is a garage behind the smaller unit that has a shared wall with the garage for the larger unit. And with that connected wall, we were able to utilize a zero lot line and really maximize the space that we were using on our lot. Plus, it helped us navigate the setbacks from the two streets as the lot was on a corner, so that it made it a little bit easier to get the city, or get it through the entitlement process at the city. So those homes are now occupied. Again, we ended up selling the smaller one at $140,000 and the larger one at $170,000. The next way we kind of attempted to tackle, we attempted to utilize tiny homes to address our below market rental issue. We are at essentially a 0% vacancy rate, and we have been that way for approximately the last 7 years. back in 2016, HRDC was, we were approached by an investment firm out of New York, actually, and they had unused, never been lived in, rig site housing units in the Bakken oil field. And the bottom of the commodities market happened to fall out, and they had 75 of these units that they had nowhere to use them. So, and in fact, the only other option that this the investment firm had was to send these rig site housing units to the Gulf Coast of Texas, which would have incidentally required literally shipping them directly past the manufacturer of the homes. So we were able to acquire 75 units of, and we call them cabins now, rig site housing units. We've kind of dropped that term, but we were able to acquire the housing units for pennies on the dollar and for a much lower cost than we could ever possibly build 4 walls and a roof. So we took the risk and brought the 75 units to Bozeman to utilize throughout our 3-county service area. Minicucci Square is the closest project where these units have been utilized. You can go to the next slide. They are 450 square feet and 550 square foot units. They're 1 and 2 bedrooms, and we were able to offer these up. And we didn't utilize any federal funding, so we had a lot of flexibility, which was really nice on this project. And we were able to offer rents starting at $800 a month. These leased up in well, actually they were leased up before we ever got our certificate of occupancy, and they've turned into a pretty good project. They're meeting the needs of our community. If people are interested in utilizing rig site housing for their affordable housing, I would suggest reaching out to me. We have some takeaways from utilizing this sort of housing that would be valuable if you plan to go down this road. Not the least of which is that the infrastructure costs for these units is higher than we expected, and they're not individually metered. So that was a big problem that we had to kind of navigate. So moving on. So the third way we are attempting to utilize tiny homes to address our housing issues here in Bozeman is by kind of adopting the Housing First Village approach, and it's definitely not something that's new to Bozeman or new to this country. Portland, Seattle, Austin, Texas. There's quite a few communities have gone down this road with saying that we're going to provide low barrier housing for our chronically homeless population and kind of get a stable roof over the head of our chronically homeless population, with the thought being that once you have a stable roof, you'll begin to utilize other services that are available to them. So you can go to the next slide. So these are very small units. These are 144 square feet. We have 50 units. We're still looking for the land, actually. So we have 3 units that are built as kind of prototypes. 1 or 2 of them are on the campus of Montana State University. They're being utilized as student housing by a student in the School of Architecture to kind of work out the bugs and see kind of what are some of the long-term issues that the house might face and things that need to be addressed before we start utilizing them as housing for our chronically homeless population. So we can go to the next slide. So a few things have happened since we've kind of embarked on these 3 projects. Bozeman passed an accessory dwelling unit ordinance, clearly not as extensive as what's happening in Los Angeles, but they do have a primary residency requirement, a maximum size of 600 square feet, maximum 1 bedroom, and they can be attached or detached. And to accompany this ordinance, HRDC, the 2 models, the Tidbit unit and the box loft that I showed you the rendering of earlier, those have been approved by the City of Bozeman as appropriate ADU units. So they can go through the entitlement process with the city relatively quickly. They've already been approved and built, so the city has a good understanding of what these two will look like. And HRDC, through our architect partner, Constructive Solutions here in Bozeman, they were generous enough to give us the construction documents for those properties, so we can waive our reuse fee in exchange for a below-market rent guarantee. We're looking for 10 years of affordable rents, and that's kind of still being ironed out. And we, like Helen was mentioning, we're not sure what mechanism to employ to ensure that the below-market rents are to ensure the commitment to the below-market rents. We don't know that we want to go the route of a deed restriction or some other mechanism. So we're still kind of sorting through that. So those are the efforts that HRDC has embarked upon over the last year, and then we recently discovered that we were awarded the Sustainable Communities Innovation Challenge Healthy Affordable Housing Funds through the Fannie Mae Foundation, along with LISC. Congratulations to LISC. We were one of 5 organizations across the country to be awarded these funds. So we will have an injection of about $500,000 to continue our chronic homelessness, tiny homes, Housing First Village program, and we're very excited about having those resources moving forward and utilizing them to really get this project off the ground and get people into those units. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. I'm always looking for feedback and always accepting of any advice that anybody has to offer. And thank you very much for the time. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Brian, and also thank you, Helen. I did start to see some questions come in the chat, so if you have more, feel free to send them. For those of you who might have missed it in the beginning, I am Imani Darden. I'm one of the program officers for Knowledge Management and Strategy, and the reason why we wanted to share more about this work is because it seems to have been like a hot topic in the issue area around affordable housing development. It has been a space that LISC has been in for some time. And with the uptick in the affordable housing crisis and then also homelessness, as both Brian and Helen shared, across their 2 different geographies, this is one of the strategies that cities and states are exploring as an alternative to making housing available, flexible for both the owners, and then also addressing density issues. So thank you again for joining. And there was a question around seniors older adults, the ADUs being tailored to them either as homeowners or renters. I saw that Helen responded in the chat. Brian, has that come up at all in your work with HRDC, like the elder population?
Yeah, but fortunately for us, most of our elderly projects, they tap into LIHTC funding here, and that has kind of been the mechanism that we've used to address our senior housing issue. It's certainly not it's not meeting the need entirely, but elder housing for seniors hasn't really risen to the level of need that our kind of our workforce housing and our homelessness population it requires.
Thank you. And there's a question directly for Helen that just came in. Helen, if you could address which of the programs are currently in progress?
Yes. So in terms of the various programs I mentioned, the The City of LA's pilot project is still in progress. A ribbon cutting will be happening in the next month, and the city is in the process of deciding how to pass their ADU ordinance. And similarly, the City of LA received $1 million Bloomberg Philanthropies grant, so they're going to be creating a ADU program, probably similar to ours with their own incentives, and our goal is that we can align and support one another. So that's what's happening in the City of LA. In the County of Los Angeles, the 3 homeowners that are getting this $75,000 forgivable loan, they're all in various processes. They're all in various phases of about to be starting construction to finalizing the design permits. So the goal is that by next year, you'll have 3 formerly homeless families being able to move into these units. And for the Backyard Homes project that I spent the most time on, that program is in process. It launched at the end of last year, and we just closed our application. So for the first round of homeowners on May 1st, we received, without doing kind of citywide outreach, over 140 applicants, and we're hoping to sign contracts with our first batch in the next month or so. So the goal is that by next year, we'll have 10 to 12 ADUs that are housing Section 8 voucher holders, and probably midway through the process, once the construction loan closes, the mortgage product closes, then we can actually use that revolving fund in terms of the guarantee to help more homeowners.
Thank you, Helen. And I guess similar to that, in terms of like the location of the ADU project, has there been any discussion around like targeting it to a particular neighborhood, like in terms like other considerations about transit, access to other resources that are in a neighborhood?
We were pretty open in terms of who we did outreach to. I think the reality is that there's going to be less homeowners in higher income neighborhoods, just because it's not the best value unless they're very progressive and they want to contribute, because for some homeowners, they live in neighborhoods where the market rate is $4,000 for a 2-bedroom. So we try to avoid those neighborhoods, knowing that the neighborhoods that would be have homeowners that were the most interested were probably those neighborhoods where there are lots of still low to moderate income homeowners, where the market rate for housing is really close to what the Section 8 monthly rates are. But we didn't want to be exclusive, because there are some homeowners in wealthy neighborhoods who say, I have my own financing and I want to participate, which has been really inspiring and rewarding and great to know. But in terms of transit, LA is building out our transit system. So if you're not within half a mile to transit, you just have to build that parking spot, and that sometimes is more difficult given the sites. And then I would say that we try to avoid hillsides, because hillsides means a lot of kind of civil engineering and foundation work, and it ends up being less cost effective. But I think overall, our outreach process has been building off of the amazing community-based organizations throughout LA that care about this issue, and they already have a base. So we've been doing presentations at various neighborhood groups, and we focus more on one, neighborhoods that are more progressive, and then 2, neighborhoods where there are homeowners that who without a program like this would not be able to build an ADU.
Thank you. And Brian, you mentioned it was just a question of clarification around the 75 units. Like, what was the source of those units?
Yeah, so it was an investment firm out of New York who had actually purchased the units prior to the fallout of the shale oil market in the Bakken oil field. So they never really had the opportunity to deploy the units. They were literally still wrapped in plastic, and they had been bought kind of purely on the speculation that the commodities market would continue to improve, and it clearly didn't. And so we were just kind of out of the blue approached by this investment firm, and they just offered them up to us for a very good price, and kind of threw caution to the wind and bought all 75 of them.
Wow. Congratulations to that. And I also saw that Helen, had shared that another source of funding in order for LAMAS to do the work has also been from philanthropy. So a mix of funding sources here to do this work. There's a question from New York with the basement pilot conversion program. A question around Section 8 vouchers in California. I'm assuming that this is a no, but the question is, can landlords discriminate against Section 8 vouchers in California?
Yes, they can and they have. And the County of LA is currently deliberating on legislation that would end that.
Okay. Wow. Have there been any other, policy issues either on your end, Helen or Brian, that you found that you're up against, and how has your respected organization worked to leverage your partnerships to advocate on behalf of this work?
This is Helen. I'll start. I think that one of the interesting opportunities for government to play a role, and it's been great to see Brian's approach, is to use the oversight of expediting the permitting process or reducing fees. So I've seen throughout the nation that certain jurisdictions that want to see more ADUs, period, or see more ADUs that are affordable will use those tools of expediting the permitting process by approving designs like what Brian did, or just by reducing fees. The city of San Diego probably has the most progressive ADU policy in the state of California, I think. And they're an example of that. For our program, the Backyard Homes project, we ended up creating this before the city got their ADU program and funding in the works. So for us, we know that homeowners want to see something extra. So even though I listed out all those incentives, there's not free money, and I think the free money is what is very compelling. In-kind services, like what we're saying, the cost of our project management and subsidize and reduce architectural fees is about $14,000 per home, but that still doesn't seem as a real thing. So the idea that the government would say, well, we will, give you a tax break, we will reduce your fees we'll give you a credit for $10,000 in fees, that ends up, I would say, potentially getting more homeowners interested in doing something that is a little bit more above and beyond. Homeowners can build ADUs and do whatever they want. I think the above and beyond is making them affordable. And I think to that extent, the role of government and their incentives and the ability for philanthropy to offset those costs will just help get more affordable ADUs built. We have less of unlike Brian, there aren't that many free land out there. A lot of that has been consumed, or they're actually zoned for higher density.
Thank you.
From our perspective, a lot of our work has been spent at the city level, providing incentives for people who build housing that's affordable at certain AMI target levels. Like having your impact fees waived is something that we were able to negotiate with the city for people who sell homes or rent at prices that are affordable to 70 and 80% of our area median income. We also had to go to the state legislature this year because in a lot of ways, going through the entitlement process at the city was made even more difficult because there really wasn't a definition for tiny homes or for what it was that we were really building, which is tiny homes on permanent foundations. And, they were like, well, are these mobile homes? Are these manufactured homes? And really the answer is that they're not either one. And so we did get some legislation passed at the state level that allows county and local governments to allow for and regulate tiny home villages. It allows county and local governments to tax tiny homes on on wheels, and it kind of just solidified the definition of what a tiny home is. Does it mean that it's on wheels? That was, believe it or not, that was a huge hang-up, was are these on wheels or are they on permanent foundations? And so that we were able to get legislation passed to allow cities to kind of create their own definitions for tiny homes. And then our most recent kind of push has been, it's a little broader than just housing and just ADUs or tiny homes or whatever it may be. And we've been kind of working with the city to come up with what we've been calling our community coding push. And really kind of comes from the fact that, and I can't speak for Los Angeles, but here in Bozeman, basically, if you want to embark on doing an ADU, or if you want to embark on a multifamily project or anything really, you have to assemble a team, and we all know who needs to be on the team. You need to have your architects, you need to have your engineers and your planners, you got to have your real estate attorneys, and it really it gets costly before you ever get to the preliminary plat phase. Even you've already spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on professional expertise, and so we're really pushing for this community coding to kind of, as Helen said earlier in her presentation, to get government out of the way and allow people and builders to build a broader spectrum and diversity of housing here in Bozeman, because if we could take out and make our city code something that could be navigated by a layperson without having to spend literally hundreds of thousands of dollars on a team of professionals before you ever get started, we could really lower the cost of building more affordable housing.
And in terms of the cost, Brian, so I know that you mentioned some of the units were $800, per month, but how does that compare to kind of like the average wage that people earn? Are people able to afford that?
Yeah, so we use just the standard definition of affordable, which is not more than a third of your income being spent on rent or housing generally. Our standard 2-bedroom here in the Bozeman market generally goes between $1,500 and $1,750 a month. So they're well below market rate rents.
Wow. Okay. And this is for both of you. In terms of general timelines for eligibility, like working with contractors, construction, if you could just speak more towards that.
Well, I can tell you that on our humble home projects, which was the 300-foot and the 600-foot homes, those from basically concept to construction took just over a year in time, and the bulk of that time was spent going through walking the project through the city. Once we actually got all of our approvals, the construction went really very quickly. We did get a lot of flack over, and this is for anybody who goes with a smaller footprint, you just need to know that you're going to get flack over the cost per square foot. And the bottom line is that the cost per square foot isn't the best metric to judge these units on, because you can't take out the cost of a kitchen, you can't take out the cost of a bathroom. So those costs are fairly static. So it's really not the best metric to judge kind of the price of these homes. We're offering up a product that is $100,000 below the next most affordable single-family home in Bozeman. So we felt like we hit the mark, but we did get a lot of flack over the cost per square foot. But that being said, the construction part took a very short amount of time. I think it only took us maybe 8 weeks of construction to actually get them up once we got the approvals from the city.
Wow, that is amazing, Brian. Our timeline is like 6 to 8 months for construction, even though we have great weather here in Los Angeles. But there is a longer approval process every time you get to certain phases, the foundation, walls, electricity, plumbing. So waiting for the inspectors to come out to give us the go-ahead, the 6 months mark is us being conservative. But our goal is that for everything else leading up to when construction is ready to go. Our goal is that it is about a 15-month process from when a homeowner is eligible and selected to signing the contract to us expediting the design process to a month. And we still actually have to put 2 to 3 months for permitting just because even though it seems like it's very simple, it sometimes is somewhat unpredictable. So a partnership with our government agencies to provide certainty is something that we're going to be learning how to do in this process. So our timeline is a 15-month turnaround time for each homeowner, and we're hoping to phase it so that once we have our first batch, we work halfway through, and then we can start in the next batch. So we're still continuing to accept homeowners who are interested, and I hope I'll have some exciting news to share in a year when we do another webinar on how the program actually shut down.
Yes, we are looking forward to that, Helen. This is an LA-specific one, so there's someone who works at a nonprofit, and they conduct their programming outside of a home, like within a home, and they have a detached garage. Would a nonprofit of this nature be eligible for one of the projects?
That's an interesting question. I think we are open to a case-by-case consideration of thinking about what it means to create kind of affordable spaces. I think our target was affordable housing for low-income individuals, but there could be, we're open to kind of everyone who has like a different perspective. So I think whoever asked this question, feel free to send me an email, and I can give you some other options besides ADUs that could be viable space, especially in commercial zone lots. But we've been getting exceptions, like some seniors, for example, want to move into the ADU. So rather than that ADU that they're building be for Section 8 housing, they want to move into the ADU that is being built because it's smaller, and then be able to rent out their existing home. So that's an example of a nuance which still gets at the ultimate goal of creating more affordable housing. I think for a nonprofit, it will really be dependent on kind of the services that are provided. Is the use allowed on a residential zone? And, is that even financeable? Does that meet the criteria of our financing partners? But I'm open to all of these different ways to provide kind of, a service to the community.
Thank you, Helen. And in terms of tiny homes, I actually like this question. Are there any health considerations for tiny home spaces?
I don't know if you're referring to are they ADA compliant? I guess in terms of health considerations outside of ADA compliance, it's for us, we live in a pretty cold climate. Helen mentioned, that it's warm year round and they could build year round. We operate, we have very distinct build seasons, and so you have to have all of your paperwork in order so that as soon as the snow melts, you can get to work on your foundations and you can make the most of the warm weather, which is fleeting in Montana. But there are, the health considerations are that, obviously these need to be energy efficient. They need to be extremely well insulated. That's been a big consideration for us, particularly with the Housing First Village, is making sure that those are buttoned up really well and they will be able to kind of weather the Montana winters. Outside of that, the health considerations are what you would have with any standard home.
Thank you. Well, we are approaching time. I know that people ask, will the presentations be shared? Yes, I'll share the recording with everyone that is here once it is made available. And Helen also has an additional resource that can be shared with attendees. So look out for that by the end of the week. And we do thank you again. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Helen, for sharing more about your work, for really taking this strategy and really working on it to address the specific needs within your respective communities and sharing that with our network. We really do appreciate you taking the time out to do so. But yeah, if anybody else has questions, Brian's information is there. Helen also shared her information, and that'll be shared post-webinar as well. So thank you all. Hope you enjoy the rest of your day and your week.
Thank you.